All right, we're going to pick back up with part 3 of chapter 34. So, looking at birds. Birds are archosaurs, but almost every feature of their reptilian anatomy has undergone modification in their adaptation to flight. Let me go back here. So, in the reptile group. So again, ancestral amniotes are here. So that divides into lepidosaurs and archosaurs. And archosaurs, turtles, crocodiles, pterosaurs, all the way down to ichthyosaurs. So lots of extinct dinosaurs, and then lepidosaurs. Those were the lizards and the snakes. So those are pretty different than the archosaurs, of which birds is one category of those. So you can see a dinosaur division here, and then you have birds. And of that group, you can see those are the only ones that are still alive today. So archosaurs include turtles, crocodilians, and birds, which are the live clades or groups from the archosaurs today. All right, so let's go back to our birds. Here we go. So some derived characters of birds. Remember, a derived character versus an ancestral character. Derived characters are the new characters that this group has acquired to allow them to differentiate from other clades or groups. So again, many of these derived characters are adaptations that have helped to facilitate flight. Major adaptation is the wings that they have with keratin feathers. And other adaptations that have allowed for flight to take place are weight-saving adaptations. So lack of a urinary bladder, females that only have one ovary, small gonads, and loss of teeth, which contribute to weight, are another thing that birds have as a derived character. So if we look at a picture here, here's the bald eagle, bone structure, hollow bones, again, make for a much lighter structure. And if you look at the structure of their feathers, you can see that the feathers have a particular shaft that allow for the feathers to hook into each other, which allow for the lift that's required for birds to fly. So if we think about flight as an actual process or adaptation, flight is great because it enhances the ability to hunt and scavenge for food, also allows for the birds to escape any terrestrial predators, also helps them with migration. So moving from one place to another, perhaps for mating purposes or to escape poor weather. One thing to remember is that flight does require a great amount of energy. They have to have very acute or good vision and very fine muscle control. Birds as a group generally display very complex behaviors, including elaborate courtship rituals. Think about peacocks with those beautiful feathers dancing around, the males dancing for the females. In birds, fertilization is internal. The eggs and the developing embryos inside must be kept warm through brooding by one or both of the parents. So fertilization happens internally, and then the female lays the eggs in whatever location, typically a nest or some area where one or both of the parents will lay on top of the eggs or lay near them to keep them warm through the process of development, and then the eggs will eventually hatch. So birds probably descended from small theropods, a group of carnivorous dinosaurs. Feathers evolved long before powered flight, so there are some new fossil records that show that there were dinosaurs that had feathers. So that would be a transitional fossil, just like Tiktaalik was a transitional fossil. The early feathers might have been found on these theropods, and they evolved for potentially insulation, so warmth, camouflage, or courtship displays. So again, back to this idea of males having particular types of feathers, bigger, brighter, bolder, to attract females. And by 160 million years ago, feathered theropods had evolved into birds. Archaeopteryx remains the oldest known bird. It had feathered wings, but retained ancestral characters such as teeth, claws, and a long tail. And this is an artist's representation of what an Archaeopteryx might have looked like based on fossil evidence. So again, a very long tail that was able to help with flight, but also still had many vertebrae, beak with teeth, the wings, and then claws on the ends of those wings. Let's see. Here, let's go back here. Check on this.
Spectrum just launched Spectrum One, where Spectrum Internet, advanced Wi-Fi, and unlimited mobile come together to keep you seamlessly connected wherever you are.
All right, today we're going to talk about birds. So of course I'm at home and I don't have a lot of time today to really edit this lecture. I want to try to get it out here as quickly as I can for you guys so you'll have it. And you might hear some stray kid noises in the background, and that's okay. But what I really want to talk about are birds, the extant archosaurs. Now, of course, that also includes the crocodiles as well. But birds are a really cool group of animals. And I love this picture of a roseate spoonbill next to an alligator. Only in about Florida would you ever see something like that. So, here's some learning objectives. Basically, the main thing today is I want you to be able to discuss the evolution of birds from dinosaurs, what are the different hypotheses about birds, and of course, know some of the defining characters of birds and the origins of feathers, because that's kind of important, because right now, feathers make a bird. So just as a reminder, birds are archosaurs, and when we look at all of Sauropsida, there are two major lineages, the Lepidosauria, which we've already seen with the snakes, lizards, and the tuatara, and then the archosaurs, or the ruling lizards, which includes turtles, either sister to it or nested somewhere in there, of course, crocodiles, pterosaurs, the dinosaurs, and of course, the birds that evolved from the dinosaurs as well. This is our archosaur phylogeny, and if you look far to your right, you see birds, and birds are a type of theropod dinosaur. One of the cool things about archosaurs, they are the first vertebrate to evolve flight, and they did it twice. They evolved it, of course, with the pterosaurs and with birds. And one thing, you often hear the word pterodactyl. Pterodactyl means like winged finger. And pterodactyl is a genus of pterosaurs. So there is good evidence that birds descended from dinosaurs. Now, as I've said earlier, theropods were these, they were bipedal, which means they walked on two legs, and we have now discovered feathered dinosaurs, which means that feathers evolved before flight. And the question is, why did dinosaurs evolve feathers? And this, of course, is Oviraptor, and we need to change the name of this poor animal. Ova means egg, raptor means like eater. When they discovered this dinosaur bent over her nest, they thought that she was caught in the act of eating the eggs during this landslide. In reality, it was a female, and she was protecting her eggs as they were from this landslide, and she was being a good mom, and we called her Oviraptor. We need to fix that. All right, I digress. Theropods evolved dinosaurs, which were later used for flight. And it was thought for years that fossils, especially old fossils, like from 6,500 million years ago, did not have any type of molecular or organic molecules associated with them. There'd be no proteins, no DNA, no nothing, no organic molecules. Well, that turns out to be wrong. Our ability to detect molecules at tiny levels is incredible these days. And we are actually pulling molecules off of ancient fossils, including proteins and other pigments. Now, this is somewhat controversial, but I think these labs are trying to be very careful about it. And in one cool study, they did pull collagen off of a T-Rex, and that collagen, guess what, was related to birds. So that's another line of evidence that dinosaurs are related to birds, or birds evolved from dinosaurs. So feathers evolved first. So why evolve a feather? Well, there's different ideas about why, or hypotheses. One is thermal regulation. I mean, think about this. You can take a little chickadee. These things are tiny little birds. You can go up to the top of the mountains in the wintertime. I'm out there in a giant winter coat, freezing my butt off trying to photograph them. And there's these little chickadees that weigh a few grams running around in the cold or flying around in the cold. And they can do that because their feathers are amazing at insulation. Another reason, sexual selection. Okay, female choice has really driven a lot of crazy things in biology. So it is possible that feathers evolved for some type of sexual selection, and then eventually feathers, whether or not they were thermal regulation, sexual selection, both, I mean, they're not mutually exclusive at all, were then co-opted into flight, and we call that an exaptation. Now, an exaptation basically is where you create a structure for one purpose, it gets used for another purpose. So if you're evolving feathers for thermal regulation, you evolve them to use flight. That'd be an example of exaptation. And I must remind you that evolution is never forward looking, right? It's reacting to what's happening into the past. So you never evolve a structure going, oh, I'll evolve these feathers for insulation. Oh, but now we can use it for flight in the future. No, no, no. We've also discovered fossils as early as the 1860s. I mean, right after Darwin published The Origin of Species, he predicted, hey, we're going to find transitional fossils. And sure enough, in the 1860s and near Hamburg, Germany, they discovered Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx is a great transitional organism. It clearly could fly. We can look at the feathers of it. It had teeth, whereas modern birds do not have teeth. Believe it or not, they actually have the genes for teeth. They're just useless and don't work and been turned off. They also have a bony tail in this Archaeopteryx. Modern day birds do not have a bony tail. And this animal has claws like a dinosaur. Modern day birds, with the exception of Pistiformes, which is a screamer, other than that, the other 10,000 species don't have any type of claws. So this animal is a transition between a theropod dinosaur and a bird. And this is what it looked like. This is an artistic rendition, and this is a lot less artistic license than you would think. It's actually fairly accurate because, believe it or not, they have actually pulled pigments from the feathers of this bird, showing that it was probably dark and crow-like. So how did birds evolve from dinosaurs? How did flight evolve? And one of the things is these theropod dinosaurs were all carnivores, which means they were active. They were running on two legs. And over evolutionary time, they got smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, they took to the trees and became arboreal. Now, a lot of people have speculated that birds evolved from the ground up, which means you're running, 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 and you leap into the air and start flying. Think about road runners. Or are you gliding? Are you arboreal up in the trees? And then you start gliding from tree to tree and you evolve flight like that. And that would be the gliding hypothesis. Now, if you were to go back to the Cretaceous, you would go between 65 million years ago and about 150 million years ago. Let's go back to about 100 million years ago. There were these cool lineage of birds. They're all extinct, called, if I can say this, Enantiornithes. Okay, for all of you organic chemistry buffs, enantioforms, all right. I know enantiomers, that's bringing up some bad memories, but enantiomers, of course, they're mirror images, but they're non-superimposable mirror images. Enantiornithes, ornithes means bird, enant means opposite. And the reason why is their shoulder was built the opposite of modern day birds through convergent evolution, resembled many of our modern day birds. These ones had teeth. So that's pretty cool. So modern feathers today are made up of beta keratin. We have keratin, they're very strong structures and they allow for flight. Of course, this is a western screech owl that we caught down in the Kofa National Wildlife Refuge down in Arizona. So it's giving us a stink eye because we caught it and we're holding it and I'm taking pictures of its wings. And it's pretty cool when you see these guys fly, you can't hear them at all. Feathers today are like basically the defining character of birds. I mean, this is what makes birds unique, are feathers. And they are quite diverse. Some are used for flight, some are used for insulation, some are for display. Some of them actually are right around the mouth and can help the flycatchers collect insects. So basically you have the vane, you've got a rachis, you've got barbs, and then you've got the halo shaft that holds it together. So there are different types of feathers, of course. You have vane versus down feathers. Down feathers are what we like to make our down sleeping bags out of, down jackets. And the downs, so they're very, very, very soft. So a wing feather on the left, that is a flight feather. Notice it's asymmetric. What I mean is the leading edge, when a bird is flying, the leading edge is shorter and the trailing edge is longer. You got down feathers. The one on the bottom is a tail feather. Then you have contour feathers, similplumes, bristles, and fillet plumes as well. And the bristles, like I said, are often right around the beak, and they help birds catch insects on the flight. So this, of course, is our wing feather. You've got the rachis right down the middle of it with the barbs holding the feathers together. And the calamus, of course, is where it attaches. And this is a tail from a ruffed grouse. Notice it is symmetrical around the rachis. So feathers, of course, they're used for flight, but they're also used for display. They're used for camouflage, and they're used for insulation as well. Okay, the evolution of flight. As feathers evolve for flight, there are also major changes to the skeleton of birds. One of them is, if you notice, we have, let me get it right here, we have one bone, two bone, lots of bones here in our radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. If you notice, there's a humerus on this animal. There is a radius in the ulna. And then all the carpals and metacarpals are fused together like this. And that fusing of together does several things. It makes them strong and it makes them lighter. Also, so the whole rear is all fused together to make it much more lighter and much stronger. And you can see the large keel on the breast. That keel is used for muscle attachments. So imagine we've got our chest and we've got our pecs, and our pecs are attached to our breastplate. And in us, imagine if we had this giant keel with all these muscles attached to it. That's what birds do for increased flight muscles. So if humans had flight muscles, we would have pecs the size of chickens. Another potential exaptation to birds is the one-way lung. Remember, we think that the one-way lung is an ancestral condition to archosaurs. And the reason why is because we think archosaurs, especially the dinosaurs, became dominant in the Triassic over the synapsids because of low oxygen. And having a one-way lung is, of course, much more efficient at gas exchange. So if you've got 15% oxygen in the atmosphere compared to 30% a few millions of years earlier, of course, the dinosaurs are primed to become dominant. And that one-way lung also primed the birds for flight, which is, of course, very energy demanding, and you need lots of oxygen for flight. Okay, birds are quite amazing. It's you've got a wing, you got two legs, and you got feathers and a beak, right? And there's 10,000 species of birds, and some of them are completely marine and can't even fly. Others are amazing flyers. They eat insects, they eat seeds, they eat fruit, they eat fish. I mean, birds are just incredibly diverse in what they can do with the bill. And one of my favorites is look at the flamingo on the top right for filter feeding versus, a skimmer on the bottom left. So birds can have highly specialized bills, allowing them to exploit many different niches. And of course, their feet are also very different as well. You can have on the top right, there's a golden eagle. Latch on to prey. These guys can fly off with a house cat if they wanted to. Longer toes, like on the left, are for walking on mud like a heron. In fact, some small herons can actually walk on lily pad leaves. Then on the bottom left, you've got like a sparrow. You ever notice a lot of songbirds perch on trees? So when they land down, their tendon pulls their toes tight, and they're able to perch on wires and on branches. You've got ducks, gulls, pelicans have all independently evolved webbing between their feet so they can swim. And then you've got things like roadrunners and ostriches that are very good at running as well. Okay.
So now you can see I'm not the only one who can't pronounce things sometimes. Archaeopteryx. So I said that word wrong. All right. So that was a good overview of some variations in birds, over 10,000 species. And we saw some ideas about evolution of birds from dinosaurs. So all of the living birds belong to the clade Neornithes. Ornithology is the study of birds, Neornithes. And there are several groups of birds that include one or more flightless species. The ratites are flightless birds. Examples of flightless birds would be penguins. They use their powerful pectoral or breast muscles to fly or move in the water. There are also other species of birds that we might not think would be flightless. Certain types of ducks and pigeons can also be flightless as well. Here's a flightless bird, emu. Ostrich is closely related to this. Here's a penguin, again, swimming, essentially flying underwater, so very fast swimmers. Hummingbirds are really unique because they can rotate their wings in all directions. Their shoulder sockets are able to rotate their wings forward and backwards so they can hover in a way that like a helicopter can. And they also can fly backwards because of that unique shoulder rotation. Flamingo, he mentioned, again, very specialized beak that's able to dip into the water and filter feed. So again, the reason that they become pink in color is that they eat krill, which have a pink color beta carotene that's present in them. So flamingos, when they are born, are white, their feathers are white, and the more krill that they eat over time, the pinker their feathers get. Here's a perching bird. So again, toes that lock onto the branches and the wires, and he mentioned that as well. Okay, so moving on to mammals. That's the last group that we have here. Mammals are amniotes that have some special derived characteristics that we'll talk about. A couple of those are that they have hair and they also produce milk. So represented by more than 5,300 species today, of which we are one. So here are the derived characters for mammals. Mammary glands that produce the milk. Typically, these mammary glands are feeding the young of the species. We, again, are a weird species because we drink the milk of other mammals. So think of cows or goats or sheep, right? Those animals are producing milk to feed their young. We are strange in that we often either drink that milk directly or use that milk to make other products. Mammals also have hair and a fat layer under their skin for insulation. They have kidneys that help to conserve the water and separate water from the waste products. The waste products then go on to be eliminated from the urine that accumulates in the bladder. We are endothermic. So again, we are maintaining our body temperature with a very high metabolic rate. Very efficient respiratory and circulatory systems. Generally a very large brain to body size ratio. Extensive parental care. So we often have smaller numbers of offspring and we dedicate more time and resources to raising those offspring. And then differentiated teeth, which typically are going to have a juvenile form and then an adult form as well. Kangaroo rat is an example of a mammal. Let's see here. So looking at some variations in mammals, monotremes are really interesting. They are a very different kind of mammal. They are the only egg-laying mammal. So echidnas and a platypus are the examples of animals that fall into this monotreme category. So the female monotremes lack nipples. They secrete their milk from glands on their bellies, and then the baby will suck the milk from the mother's fur. And then here's an example of a egg that has been laid by a platypus. So monotremes, again, are still mammals, um, but their variation is that they are egg layers. Marsupials are interesting. They are mammals too. They're a unique group of mammals in that they have when their offspring are born, they're born at a very early embryonic stage of development, and then the embryo or the immature offspring will climb into a maternal pouch called a marsupium, which allows for the juvenile to develop further, and then later will be able to live outside of its mother's pouch. Marsupials include possums, kangaroos, and koalas. The embryo develops within the mother's uterus inside the body and is nourished by the placenta. Again, the offspring is born very, very, very early in development, cannot live on its own, climbs into the marsupium, feeds off the milk for a very long period of time, continues to develop and grow, and then finally is able to live on its own. So marsupials are different in that their offspring are born very, very early in development and need extra time to grow in the marsupium. So here's an example. Again, very, very tiny early stage possum inside the marsupium, and then drinking the milk from the mother. And that's an example. Bilby here is another example of a marsupial. And then the last one is placental mammals. So this again is the group that we fall in. We are described as eutherians. Eutherians are different than marsupials because there is a more complex placenta that's in place, and the offspring spend a longer period of time within the uterus, and the placenta is able to provide that nourishment for longer periods of time. So the offspring that are born to placental mammals are much more developed. They still require quite a bit of time under the care of the parents, but they are more developed than a marsupial is. So if we look at the groups again, mammals are divided into monotremes. They're unique because they lay eggs. Marsupials have a placenta. The embryo develops inside, but the offspring is born at a very early developmental stage and requires extra development and growth time within the pouch called a marsupium. And then we have our placental mammals. So they're able to develop and live longer inside of the uterus due to that very complex and important placenta. So mammals can be divided up into an order including primates. Primates include lemurs, tarsiers, monkeys, and apes. And we humans, Homo sapiens, are members of the ape group. Some derived characteristics of primates. Most primates have hands and feet that are adapted for grasping and flat nails instead of claws. Some other derived characters that we find in primates: very large brain, short jaws, forward-looking eyes close together on the face, which provides depth perception. Typically, we think of forward-facing eyes that are close together as a configuration of eyes for predators, whereas prey are more likely to have large eyes on the sides of their head, so they have a more 360-degree view of the world. Our forward close eyes allow for us to have better depth perception, which allows us to chase and grab onto prey. Another thing is a fully opposable thumb that's found in monkeys and apes, and of course we are a part of the ape group. So some living primates: lemurs, lorises, and bush babies, tarsiers, and anthropoids, anthro meaning human-like, monkeys and apes, of course. So here is a lemur. Looking at the ancestral primates, and we'll talk in detail about our evolution as well. First monkeys evolved in the old world, likely Africa and Asia. Monkeys first appeared in the New World or South America roughly 25 million years ago. New and old world monkeys underwent separate adaptive radiations. Remember, adaptive radiation is this idea that new environments open up, and this allows for lots of different species to evolve. And we see that they evolve in accordance with, again, mutation rates, but also the environment in which we find them. So New World monkey, Old World monkey, very similar in appearance and adaptations that they have. So the anthropoids consist of primates, and formerly they're called apes. This includes gibbons, orangutans, orangutan. It's not orangutan. That's how most people say it, orangutan, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, and humans. Apes diverged from the old world monkeys, so macaw's example, about 25 to 30 million years ago in Africa. So again, gibbons, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorillas. All right, and we're going to pick up here with the remainder of this chapter, looking at the evolution of us, Homo sapiens. All right, see you soon for part 4.